Have you ever had a friend casually mention the Camino, or seen it pop up in a book, or noted that Hallmark made a movie that was set on the Camino and wondered, what is this Camino thing? This is the video for you. I'm going to give you a really brief overview of just what the heck the Camino is and a little bit of why I think you should walk it. Hi, I'm Jen. I'm a Catholic mindset coach and a three-time pilgrim on the Camino de Santiago de Compostela. I'm going to run through a quick overview of the Camino. We're going to do the who, what, where, when, why, and how of the Camino. And at the end of it, I hope that you will be inspired to go and walk this for yourself. It is the best thing that I have ever done. What is the Camino? So the Camino is the oldest Christian pilgrimage in Europe. It is a collection of routes that feed all throughout Europe and end up in Santiago de Compostela, which is where the Apostle St. James is buried under the altar in that cathedral. So who walks the Camino? The short answer is anyone can walk the Camino. The longer answer is it is a Christian pilgrimage through Spain, and so most people who walk it are Christian, but not all. People of all different athletic ability and stamina can walk it. People of all ages. I met infants on my Camino. I met people in their 80s on my Camino. People do it by walking or on horseback. I know that there are people who have been pushed in wheelchairs. So there's lots of different ways that pretty much anyone can walk the Camino if they want to. So if this is something that you aspire to, there is a way that you can walk it. It's also walked by people from all over the world. I met people from Australia and South Korea and South Africa, lots of people from all over Europe. So it really is a mixture. And one of the fun things about it is all the cool people that you will meet along the way. Where is the Camino? So again, the long answer is that people are coming from all over Europe and different routes. But the short answer is every route ends up in Santiago de Compostela, which is a city in the northwest corner of Spain. When is the Camino? I'm going to take this in two directions. One is historical, and one is when you should walk. In terms of when historically, Santiago became a site of pilgrimage in the 9th century. So pilgrims have been walking for over 1,000 years. In terms of when you should walk, the short answer is you can walk at any time. The longer answer is it depends on how much infrastructure and support you want or need along the way. So there's definitely a sort of Camino season that probably runs from about April through October. Beyond that, you're going to see more limited resources and, frankly, snow. So you have to be careful. If you're starting on the French route and you want to walk from Saint Jean, you can't even climb over the Pyrenees on the route before April 1st because it's closed. So if you're considering when, I think a lot of people walk in April and May, a lot of people walk September, October. I walked in July and August. It just is up to you and what time you have available. I also would flag that the feast day of Santiago is July 25th, which means that there is actually a big rush of pilgrims who are trying to reach Santiago on that particular day. And so that part of July can get pretty busy. I walked in July and August and everything was fine. It can get really hot, so be careful. Why do people walk the Camino? There are a lot of answers to this question. At the same time, most people walk for a combination of them. One of the reasons that it's become so popular today, I think people are interested in it as kind of an adventure or a challenge. They want to see if they can do it. They want to go for a long hike. They might have some time off. And so it's sort of a physical accomplishment that they are interested in. A lot of people also walk it for some sort of healing. So they might be processing grief. They might be facing a transition. They're trying to discern what their next steps might be. And then the third reason is people walk it for religious or spiritual reasons. So it's a chance to disconnect a little bit from our day-to-day lives and give us time and space to listen for what God has to say to us. So it's time for prayer. It's a connection to the pilgrims who've gone before. And it can actually explicitly be to arrive in Santiago to see St. James. I've walked for all three of those reasons and kind of a mixture together. So when I walked the Camino Frances in 2011, I was at a point in my life where I was trying to figure out what to do. I was curious if I could do this. It was a challenge. Can I do this by myself? Can I walk this far? Can I get this sense of accomplishment? The answer is yes. But I also really did do it for religious reasons because I'm Catholic and it was important to me that this was a path that millions of pilgrims had walked before me. I was really curious to sort of see the history and the various churches along the way. And arriving in Santiago really felt like what I think it's going to be like to arrive in heaven, sort of seeing everyone come in battle weary and sore, but just with this joy and satisfaction of having arrived really meant a lot to me and really was a boost to how I see my faith and how I see living it out. So ultimately, I think people walk it for a lot of these reasons mixed together, and they may also have their own other reasons, but those are some common whys. How do you walk the Camino? One step at a time. uh, it's really as simple as throwing a backpack on and walking out the door. It is more complicated than that, but it's not really more complicated than that. To be a pilgrim, if you want to stay in the various pilgrim hostels along the way, and if you want to earn the Compostela, which is the religious certificate that you can get in Santiago that declares that you have made this pilgrimage. If those are things that you want, then you need to get a pilgrim's credential. You can get those at many different places in Spain itself. A lot of times, churches or cathedrals will have their own. I got mine from the American Pilgrims on the Camino organization. They will send you a credential that you can use. That's like a passport almost. It's a small booklet. You get it stamped along the way, and those stamps are how you demonstrate your progress and the sort of proof that you have walked this as a pilgrim. So you want to try and get 2 stamps every day at a minimum, but you can get that at the hostels you're staying at. You can get that at the bar in the morning when you get coffee or wherever you stop for lunch or dinner. And then a lot of other places, a lot of churches along the way, pretty much every church along the way has their own stamp as well. So that's part of the how, right? How do you show that you're a pilgrim? That credential is then also what gives you access to the pilgrim hostels called albergues. So this is kind of the inexpensive way to stay. And those accommodations tend to be in bunk rooms. Sometimes you can get smaller semi-private or private rooms. So a lot of it depends on how much you want to spend. But your credential is what shows that you are an actual pilgrim. So that's a big part of the how. And then it's up to you if you want to carry your backpack, if you want to send your luggage on ahead. There's lots of raging questions around what kinds of shoes or backpack or all these things. So the how can get complicated, and that's often where people kind of spiral out of control and just thinking through all the logistics. So one thing I am going to say is I think that how you walk the Camino has a lot to do with your personality, and is actually one of the things that you should consider very early on if you decide that this is something that you want to do. So if you were curious about how you might go about that, understanding your personality, I have created a Camino temperament quiz. You can take that. The link is in the description below. It's just a free quiz that will give you a little insight as to your strengths and your challenges and some suggestions for how you might approach life in a spirit of pilgrimage, so that that can inform a little bit about how you walk the Camino. So it's not just how do you walk the Camino, it's how do you walk the Camino. Another word about how, I just want to emphasize that this is a pilgrimage. So there is a difference between being a pilgrim and being a tourist. So if you just want to go and experience the beauty of Spain, which quite frankly is outstanding, food, the countryside, the people, everything is just wonderful. But being a tourist is a little different than being a pilgrim. And I think my quickest way of describing the differences is that a pilgrim has minimal to no expectations and a lot of gratitude for what is offered to them or available for them. And a tourist has a plan and an itinerary and an agenda and expectations. And so those things can come into conflict. So I would just encourage you to be open about approaching the Camino as a pilgrim, even if it's not as a Christian pilgrim, but just that nature of openness and gratitude and acceptance is really important in how you walk the Camino. So Camino fast facts, distance, totally up to you. If you want to earn the Compostela, you have to walk at least the last 100 kilometers into Santiago. When I walked the Francis, I walked about almost 800 kilometers, which is 500 miles. When I walked the Portuguese, probably 120 kilometers-ish. I started in Ponta de Lima. And then when I walked the Camino Inglés, that's one that's barely over 100 kilometers to qualify for the Compostela. So it depends on which route you want to do, but there's lots of distances and a lot of walking. How long does it take? I would say if you want to do a shorter Camino to earn a Compostela, I'd give yourself about a week. And then I took about 6 weeks to do the French route, 40 days. So anywhere in between there. Obviously, people walked from farther in France or beyond in Europe, it was even longer. So it's up to you. There's no set definition. This is one thing about the Camino. There's not a definition or the thing that is the Camino. You get to make a lot of decisions and choices as to what you want it to look like. In terms of how expensive it can be, so we've talked a little bit already about accommodations and needing your credential to prove that you're a pilgrim. So if you have those two things, you can keep costs down to a pretty good amount. Spain is not super expensive, particularly in terms of food. groceries. They have pilgrim menus in most places, and so you can probably get by on, I would say, between 25 and 50 euro a day right now. And a lot of that has to do with how much you are willing or want to spend on accommodations. So the albergues tend to be 10, 15 euro, but then if you want private rooms or fancier places, you're going to spend more money, but it does not have to break the bank. So remember, if you are curious about the Camino, if you want to know more about what kind of pilgrim you might be, take that temperament quiz in the link below. But also, I've got a few videos about more planning and more ways to get yourself ready, both mentally and physically, for the Camino, and I will link those in the description over here. But mostly, I like to say, wherever you are on your journey, you are not behind, you are not alone, I am walking with you, and wherever you are, I wish you a buen camino, and I hope to see you on the way.